Hello everyone, welcome to Fostering Inclusive Spaces for Introverted Students and Colleagues. I hope to make this next hour worth your while, and I hope you leave inspired to implement some strategies that help make class and office environments more equitable and inclusive for introverted students and colleagues. Firstly, it may or may not be obvious in this recording, but I am very congested right now. At the time of this recording, it's just a few short days until the scheduled date for the presentation that you're viewing right now, and I'm currently recovering from COVID. I'd rather record a little, stop, and take care of my obvious symptoms and rest when needed, and then record the next slide and so on, rather than present live with my symptoms interfering with the delivery and interfering with the timing. While I don't think I sound great in this recording, I hope you can look past that, and I hope the information is useful to you. Here is how the next hour and 20 minutes should go. First, I will play a video presenting information on the topic and providing some guidance based on recommendations from professionals from multiple disciplines and conclusions from research studies. The video starts with taking care of business, including what the presentation workshop is and is not, how to use the Zoom features, and what to expect when this recording goes on YouTube. While the video plays, please use the Zoom chat feature to post questions and comments. I will be jotting down your questions and comments while the video plays and will answer those after the video ends. I'm here with you live, even though the video is playing instead of me presenting live. In the final 15 to 20 minutes of today's session, I will, live, address questions and comments you previously posted, and should time allow, I will be available for additional questions. Should time run short, additional questions can be emailed to me. Finally, I will post a link to an anonymous survey for feedback. It is anonymous and for my own growth as a professional, and I am grateful to all of you who take the time to provide me with feedback. Thank you. Before diving into the topics of the day, there is business to take care of. Zoom has features useful for today's event. I will go over how to use them momentarily. First, though, during the presentation, please feel free to use the chat feature while the video is running. I am watching live with you, and I will answer the questions you pose after the video ends. As with the previous presentations I've done, this event is being recorded and will be available on YouTube by way of the CTL website and my own. That means anyone on the internet can view the video. However, your gallery images and the chat text should not be visible on the recording. The video availability on the internet allows you to review this workshop presentation again whenever you would like. As a final matter of business, please be aware today's event is on the topic of introversion, specifically supporting your introverted students and colleagues. I am offering a positive approach to equity and inclusion based on psychological science. What I am not doing is providing mental health support. If you have an interest in other topics such as mental health, social anxiety, autism, ADHD, and other topics in psychology, you may email me and I can pass along some sources for general information. For personal issues, please see your doctor or your mental health support person for assistance. Also, for those whose mental health issues impact their work, Los Rios has an employee assistance program for employees. Let's take a short look at Zoom for today's event. The relative interactive Zoom features are audio, chat, and react. The audio feature refers to whether or not you can be heard by others. The microphone at the bottom left and the top middle of your Zoom screen, circled in blue on your screen in front of you, on the screenshot, shows your microphone status. All participants' microphones are disabled temporarily until the end of the video. After everyone's microphone is enabled, you will be able to control yourself whether you are muted or unmuted. In the meantime, please feel free to use chat for communicating during the video. To enable chat, click on the chat icon at the bottom middle of your screen. A chat box appears at the right of your screen for you to type into. As questions and comments arise, please post them in the chat box and I will address those at the end. If you want to be expressive in response to the presentation or exercises, the React feature is enabled for your use. Essentially, these are emoticons, some fancy, some plain. The icon is located at the bottom of your screen to the right of the chat icon. Just as people who belong to majority racial and ethnic groups, gender groups, and majority sexual orientations may have difficulty seeing the challenges of those who are minoritized until it's brought to their attention, so can ambiverts and extroverts have difficulty noticing the challenges of introverts. The matter gets more complex when we consider intersectionality, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and personality traits such as introversion. One goal of this talk is to have more faculty considering their introverted students when designing classroom spaces, activities, course assignments, and evaluations, as well as considering your introverted colleagues. Doing so is a matter of equity and inclusion. By the end of this talk, you should be able to 1. Describe the psychological concept of introversion. I'm going to discuss with you what introversion is and is not. 2. Differentiate among introversion, extroversion, and ambiversion. 3. Identify ways default U.S. and college culture may increase stress for introverted students and colleagues. And 4. Apply ideas to incorporate into the classroom and office environments to better support diverse classroom populations. The reaction you choose will appear on your Zoom gallery image for all present to see, and also for you at the bottom middle of the screen. I hope this brief review helps you to use the chat features easily today. There are both significant differences and substantial similarities among humans and other mammals. In view of this, some animals are commonly referred to as introverted, including skunks, hedgehogs, pandas, sloths, koalas, and the house cat, who I chose to be the mascot for today's talk for a few reasons. While most cats display what we interpret as introverted traits, each cat is unique. Same with every introverted person you've ever met. Anyone who has known more than one cat knows they all have their idiosyncrasies, their unique routines, their particular likes and dislikes. In my view, one of the reasons that cats are so popular on the internet is because finally, cat owners have a way of sharing their special little fur monsters with the world. If a cat knows you well, the cat will relax, engage, seek you out for company, play with you, and simply hang out. The more you get to know a cat, the more surprises it has to show you about who they are. Similar with introverted people, there are depths to their personae that are only shared with those they know well. If a new person enters a cat's environment or a cat is in a new space, the cat will likely hide or engage in other behaviors very different from how they are when they feel comfortable. It's similar for human introverts. Once comfortable, introverted people may have a lot to say, though quietly. But upon first meeting an introvert or in a space with many other people, they are not likely to put themselves on display. Finally, cats are unapologetic in their seemingly introverted ways. This is where human introverts may differ considerably from their feline counterparts. Many human introverts find themselves making excuses for who they are, their preferences, and trying to adapt to our extroverted culture, often wondering, what's wrong with me? I suggest introverts adopt the confidence and self-acceptance of the cat, which is difficult in an environment set up for extroverts and in a world that pressures introverts to behave in ways that conflict with their very natures. On this slide, all of the photos are of the same cat. It's my cat. That's Cora, just because I find her adorable and I thought I'd take advantage of my role in presenting this talk by showing her off. You are welcome. According to Jonathan Roche of The Atlantic, introverts may be common, but they are also among the most misunderstood and aggrieved groups in America, possibly the world. I think if you replaced the word introverts to cats in that quote, cats would agree with this statement. Of course, this is hyperbole, but the truth of the matter is that being an introvert in an extroverted environment results in psychological pain and real-world disadvantages. This is why fostering an inclusive environment for introverts is an equity matter. It is well known that introverts experience bias in the classroom and in the workplace on the daily. There are pressures from others to conform and to be, quote, a team player. Stereotypes about introverted people and misinterpretations of their behaviors has others, especially extroverts, misreading them as disengaged or standoffish and non-enthusiastic when that may not be the case at all. Continuing with equity, it is common knowledge the world does not operate as a meritocracy, and personalities play a strong role in who gets promoted, who is invited to work on a project, and who earns more money. Because personalities are not something that can be controlled, introverts are at a natural disadvantage in extroverted classrooms and work environments. And introverts are often misperceived in the classroom and workplace as being not passionate enough or not contributing in meaningful ways. One reason for this is due to introverted people are less likely to champion or show off their own work. Consequently, they don't get the credit they deserve. Interestingly, introverts tend to be less interested in the reward of credit than are extroverts. One reason extroverted people are more likely to toot their own horns is because it's rewarding for them to do so. Research shows introverts experience less of a reward for engaging in the very same behaviors. Consequently, they are naturally less likely to do so. Many classroom and workplace environments explicitly value those who dominate in discussions and robust social interactions, placing extroverts at an advantage over introverts. In so doing, the classroom and workplace are missing out on valuable contributions from the introverted members of the group. Because introverted people may be misinterpreted and misunderstood, let's start with what we are talking about when we talk about introverts. All right, let's take a look at what introversion is and is not. Introversion is considered to be a personality trait by psychologists. A personality trait is commonly defined in psychology as an individual's characteristic pattern of thinking, feeling, and acting across situations and time. We may express variations, but we were talking about on average. On average, what are the patterns for the individual of thinking, feeling, and acting across situations and time? Introversion is considered a personality trait by psychologists. Recent research in personality shows people are more influenced by situational factors than psychologists previously thought. For instance, my students are often surprised that I'm introverted when I disclose that late in the semester, since I go into performance mode when teaching my large classes, especially in RAFE, which doesn't reflect their ideas of how an introverted person behaves. However, as soon as I am done teaching, I need to rest and recharge by spending some time with myself and not interacting with others, something students don't observe, and that need for recharging after social interaction is consistent with introversion. Now, with personality traits, psychologists consider the genetic influence. Genes are influential, but they do not occur in a vacuum. They are expressed in environmental contexts. One person may have a genetic predisposition toward introversion, for example, and be raised in an environment that values extroverted characteristics, while another may be raised in a quieter environment, encouraging independent, thoughtful pursuits. As children mature, they have more choice on the environments in which they engage. However, there is pressure to appear extroverted, and in U.S. culture, many introverts spend many years mimicking extroverts in order to be part of a group. We are social animals. Both introverts and extroverts have social needs, and belonging to a group is one of them. But in a culture that values some traits over others, introverted people are experiencing more stress and pressure than are extroverts, for whom our default environments in work and school are naturally more supportive. Personality traits have their advantages and disadvantages depending on the environmental contexts. While there is no universally accepted definition of introversion in psychology, there are a few models in use. Percentages vary per definition. One psychologist purports that 90% of people are ambiverts, those who are neither introverted nor extroverted, but rather somewhere in between. On the other hand, Susan Cain, who famously started an introvert revolution, came to the conclusion in her book Quiet that 1 out of every 1 or 2 people is an introvert. One reason it's so difficult to determine who is introverted versus extro or ambiverted is because introverts and ambiverts try to pass as extroverts due to the traits associated with extroversion being highly valued, and also because there's no one agreed upon definition. The five-factor model of personality, or Big Five, the dominant personality model in psychology today, dominant in part because the traits have been shown to be universal. The Big Five lists extroverts as a trait, and the results of a personality inventory based on this model show a person to be either high, medium, or low in extroversion, compared to the average among other people. What the model uses is an average in thinking, behaving, and feeling across situations and time. Other models may describe introversion differently. Personality traits are more nuanced than they initially appear. Because of the acceptance in the field of psychology, I will be using the Big Five description of the trait, which is that an introvert is low on the extroversion continuum. Per the Big Five, on average, compared to extroverts, introverts tend to be more restful and sedate, more oriented towards seriousness in individual pursuits, and more reserved in emotional expression, and less talkative. The Big Five uses the definition of extroversion proposed by the psychologists Hans and Sybil Eysenck from the 1960s. The Eysencks proposed that extroverts have a lower basic rate of arousal. Arousal in psychology refers to alertness or awakeness. This means extroverts need external stimulation to feel alert, awake, or alive, so to speak. When alone without stimulation, extroverts tend to feel blue or depressed due to the lack of external stimulation. Consequently, extroverts have a higher need for the company of others and tend to seek new experiences, and as a group, they also tend to engage in more risk-engaging behaviors. Seeking more social interaction and risk-taking behaviors is explained by this lower basic rate of arousal. More recent research in the area of personality shows that extroverted people and introverted people differ in how they process external rewards. Extroverts experience more activity in the brain structure called the nucleus accumbens and more amygdala activity, areas of the brain that in part process rewarding behaviors as the result of risk-taking such as gambling. Here's an important finding. Extroverts also experience more activity in the reward processing areas of the brain when engaged in social activity than do introverted people. In short, extroverts find both risk-taking and social activity more rewarding than introverts do. Back to the Eysencks. Per the Eysencks, introverts have a higher basic rate of arousal. That means they are internally stimulated by default to feel alert, awake, or alive, so to speak. Due to default internal arousal, introverts can be overwhelmed by too much external stimulation from the environment, which results in experiencing more stress. Introverts are more likely to seek quiet places. When alone, without external stimulation, introverts may feel like they are recharging and getting energized from their internal life and individual pursuits. They also enjoy the company of intimate companions and small groups as opposed to a large group. There's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely, and introverts need their alone time, or their intimate BFF time and small group of family and friends time, as the external world can be overstimulating. The more recent studies on external rewards show that introverts biologically experience less of a reward from the same risk-taking and social activities that extroverts get a lot of reward from. Consequently, introverts are less motivated to engage in these types of activities. They still need and desire social engagement, but less of it and in smaller groupings. Something introversion is not it's not a disorder, not anxiety, not shyness. Simply because our environments are more advantageous to extroverts does not mean introversion is a disorder. Introverts may struggle in these extroverted cultures, but that does not mean there is something to cure about introverts themselves. A psychological disorder is generally defined as thinking, emotions, and/or behaviors that are atypical, maladaptive, disturbing to the self or others, unjustifiable, and these thoughts, feelings, and/or behaviors substantially interfere with functioning at work or in one's personal life. Psychologists do not consider introversion a disorder, but a natural part of the diversity of the human species. Many people conflate introversion and anxiety, and specifically social anxiety. Anxiety in general refers to tension, worrisome thoughts, usually about future events, and physical changes such as an increase in blood pressure. People who are socially anxious tend to worry about diffuse threats in social situations, such as being concerned about saying something embarrassing or that one will be judged by others. One can experience social anxiety, whether intro, ambi, or extroverted. Introversion and social anxiety are quite distinct. Shyness is also sometimes confused with introversion. Shyness is sometimes defined as a fear of social judgment. Regardless of introversion, extroversion, or ambiversion, all people can be shy. According to Susan Cain, shyness is inherently uncomfortable and introversion is not. However, we live in a society that values the outgoing behaviors natural for those who are extroverted. Consequently, while not inherently uncomfortable, external expectations contribute to an introvert feeling discomfort or stress regularly. Introversion, or any personality trait, also is not all of whom somebody is. Let's not box people in or reduce them to being defined by a single trait. Extroversion, ambiversion, and introversion are all significant parts of people's personalities, but just parts of a larger and more complicated whole. Personality traits reflect our behaviors, thinking, and feelings across time and situations, but I hope there's more to all of us than that. No personality inventory can reflect all of whom someone is. They are inherently limited. The big personality inventory, which measures personality traits and is based on the 5-factor model, is known by 2 acronyms. One is OCEAN and one is CANOE. The 5 traits are conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism, which means emotional and mental stability, and extroversion. I use the acronym CANOE when discussing this model with my students in class to make the point that the 5-factor model may reflect the parts of us that can fit inside a small canoe. But again, I hope there is more to all of us than that. And there is. While introversion is not all of who we are, it is a significant part of personality. In being more naturally restful and sedate, introverted people tend to need and appreciate quiet. In being more oriented towards seriousness and individual pursuits, introverted people tend to have both richer inner lives as well as hobbies and interests that inspire creativity and bring them joy. While they enjoy their time alone pursuing their pursuits, they may also very much enjoy sharing their knowledge and interests with others and learning from others. I am simply making this point here to remind us not to get too rigid in our concept of introversion. Introverts enjoy people and need social interaction, but they need social interaction in smaller doses than tends to be the default and expectation in our culture. In being less talkative, introverts are likely to be more reflective, and they need time before talking aloud. Again, this isn't a preference. Introverts have a natural tendency to take time to think things through before speaking aloud. Introverts tend to have a low tolerance for small talk, which is something that extroverts tend to enjoy very much. Introverted people tend to go deep rather than wide in conversations with others. Let's now take a look at how the default U.S. culture, including college classrooms, may increase stress for introverted students and colleagues. The following quote comes from Susan Cain's book, Quiet. Our schools, workplaces, and religious institutions are designed for extroverts. Introverts are to extroverts what American women were to men in the 1950s, second-class citizens with gigantic amounts of untapped talent. Let's take a look at some of the ways in which culture may be stressing your introverted students and colleagues. Our default U.S. environments value extroversion, and that includes college culture. Consequently, introverts are under pressure to go against their natures and behave like extroverts. In other words, many try to pass as extroverts, and when a person is behaving inauthentically, that causes them increased stress. I have met many students who try to convince themselves they are extroverted as that is considered to be more attractive, more fun, and more valued. Who doesn't want to appear attractive, fun, and of value? Of course they will mask their introverted ways, but ultimately to their own detriment. In the USA and in US colleges, introverts are constantly having demands put upon them that conflict with their natures and their needs. Firstly, we in the US tend to be loud. Anyone who has traveled knows those from the USA often announce their presence loudly, and we are well known for that around the globe. Introverts are easily overstimulated, and a noisy world causes distress for many. Secondly, tooting your own horn is important for success in business and in the professional world. But what about those who are quietly competent? Research in this area shows they can be overlooked for promotions, and others may take credit for their work. There is real-world pressure to behave in ways that go against introverted natures in order to succeed. Thirdly, group work and brainstorming are common in college and the office. This type of teamwork environment tends to work well for extroverts within limits, but not so well for introverts who thrive when allowed deep, focused work. Let's take a deeper look at brainstorming. Brainstorming involves getting a number of colleagues or students together in a group and having them originate ideas to solve a problem or create something new or evaluate concepts. A common false belief is that this approach is effective. 50 years of research has left no doubt that brainstorming does not result in more or enhanced ideas, better plans, or improved decision-making, and that team members are likely to give up when they perceive their efforts are unproductive. In fact, brainstorming has a tendency to lead to groupthink and regression to the mean. Groupthink is a well-known psychological concept defined by the American Psychological Association as a strong concurrence-seeking tendency that interferes with effective group decision-making. Symptoms include apparent unanimity, illusions of invulnerability and moral correctness, biased perceptions of the outgroup, and hold up, let's think of our introverts here, interpersonal pressure, self-censorship, and non-optimal decision-making strategies. Who do you think experiences the effects most of interpersonal pressure and self-censorship? Ambiverts, extroverts, or introverted people? Regression to the mean is a downward adjustment of performance made by the more capable members of a group so that they end up matching the less capable group members. As a mental health professional, a similar regression to the mean is something highlighted in our training in forming groups for therapy. The healthiest group members don't bring up those who are less healthy in group therapy. The presence of less healthy group members brings down the functioning of those who are healthier. Those are some reasons why brainstorming may not be an effective tool to use in the office or the classroom, regardless of the personalities or those present. Yet there is pressure to, quote, play along and interact. I think extroverted people may have a lot of fun with these types of activities, which may be why they continue, but these activities may be stressing out your introverted students and colleagues, in addition to being ineffective at reaching the identified goal. At the end of this presentation, I'll review some ideas to include some more flexibility in class and in meeting activities to meet the needs of more people. At the office, draining the introverts' batteries are in-office distractions and in-person meetings. One of the many lessons from the remote work that became the norm during the COVID pandemic was that introverted workers were happier working remotely. While working remotely, they were better able to manage their time and their energy, and studies have shown that introverts in particular are more productive when working from home than when working on site. Number 5, college classrooms may support gaining improvised public speaking skills, something that extroverts excel at, and also cause introverted students stress. One introverted newspaper reporter describes her classroom experience thusly: "I often spend more time in the classroom planning out what I'm going to say and trying to get a word in over my extroverted peers than I do actually listening and soaking in the material. The simple sentence, 'Let's hear from someone who has not spoken yet,' sends my eyes straight to the floor and fills my stomach with dread." I don't think there are any professors who wish to fill their students' stomachs with dread, but some may inadvertently do so with common teaching practices. Number 6, in terms of college culture, to help raise understanding of the pressures introverts experience daily, both in formal classroom settings and in the informal environment, I'm going to read to you a short excerpt from a university website that is attempting to welcome all students. In their welcome, they highlight meeting the needs of extroverts, introverts, and ambiverts. The welcoming message appears to start off well when addressing extroverts, and then when we get to introverts, well, let me ask you, what do you notice in the messages conveyed and how they differ? What assumptions do you hear? I'm leaving out the university name since I'm highlighting what I consider to be well-intentioned messages that miss the mark, and I recognize it's easy to be a critic and much harder to execute ideas adequately. Okay, here goes. From a university website. So why not choose a university that favors all students? This university can check all the boxes on your list of things I want in college, whether you're an extrovert, introvert, or ambivert. If you're outgoing, you're good at socializing with other students, and you thrive in group settings, there's a place for you here. This university offers a long list of opportunities for you to have fun with others on campus, from the annual chili cook-off to Spirit Week pie smashing events and more. There are also dozens of student organizations centered on fun, including the Campus Activities Board, Spirit Squad, and Volleyball Club. Okay, that first part of the message was clearly directed for the extroverts. Now let's take a look at their message for the introverts. Listen carefully to how the introverts are addressed. If you're more on the introverted side, but you don't mind getting pushed out of your social comfort zone into a world of exciting, memorable college experiences, there's a place for you too. The Assistant Director of Student Involvement and Leadership shared his suggestions for students who want to connect with others, but struggle with taking that first step. The welcome goes on to highlight programs that encourage students to, quote, come out of their shells. Some issues. First, if you were introverted and reading this, would you feel welcomed? Or would you feel as if there is an underlying message that there's something wrong with your introverted ways that the university is going to try and change? There's an explicit assumption that extroverts are, quote, good at socializing with others, but introverts, quote, struggle with taking that first step. This statement is a misstep on the part of the writers of this page. Introverts don't necessarily struggle to socialize. We simply shine in smaller, more intimate groups. We tend to go deep, not wide. Introverts may take some time to warm up to new people and may take our time to find our place in larger groups. Taking time is not necessarily a struggle unless others are rushing you. Note as well the use of the word exciting in describing the college culture. The writer may not realize they could be scaring the introverted student with potential overwhelm. There's a place for you here was written for extroverts. There's a place for you here was written for extroverts. For the introverts, the university states it will push introverts out of their comfort zone and help them come out of their shell, and that the student is not to mind the pressure that is explicitly stated. What if you do mind? Does that mean something is wrong with you? That appears implied. This message is not feeling very welcoming to me as an introvert. Pushing is a threat. Don't push me, thank you very much. It takes energy to put up psychological boundaries, to protect yourself from being pushed, and to start planning for how you're going to front, quote, not minding. This kind of pressure can be exhausting for introverted people, and introverted people can experience this kind of pressure every day by well-meaning, though misdirected, family, friends, colleagues, professors, and classmates. Moving forward, I'd like to sum up some of the highlights for each personality trait so that we have a foundation for how to better design our classroom and workspaces to be more supportive to our diverse student and colleague populations. As I review this list, ask yourself, how does your classroom or department support extroverted students and colleagues who are likely to thrive when interacting with others, find being alone draining or depressing, enthusiastically socialize, are attracted to taking risks and trying new things, think by talking and spontaneously speak, are more likely to champion their own work and toot their own horns, and are more likely to insist on their ideas when they are in leadership positions. Now, introverts. How does your classroom or department culture support introverted students and colleagues who are likely to thrive in quiet environments and are creative? Like people, but in small groups, small doses, allowing for intimate and deeper discussions. Become easily stressed by loud noise and the presence of many other people. Shine when working independently and proactively. Need time to think before speaking and acting, and need time to ponder. Observe and listen to other people closely. They're more likely to not champion their own work, but they still deserve credit and recognition. Enjoy a rich internal life and have many hobbies and interests, and in leadership roles are more likely to support proactivity in others. Finally, how does your classroom or department culture support ambiverted students and colleagues who tend to feel energized in social settings and time alone, adapt easily, are enthusiastic and assertive but not overbearing, can be decisive but cautious when taking risks, experience situational introversion or extroversion? Let's take just a moment for reflection. How does your classroom and how does your department support extroverts, ambiverts, and introverts? Do you think that one personality type may have more advantages than others, given the culture in your department and classroom? Is any personality type disadvantaged? The following quote comes from Jenna Mars, an EdTech software development product professional with experience in education, data analysis, employee engagement, and diversity, equity, and inclusion learning and development. Jenna Mars has said, valuing the output of someone's work, regardless of input or how they get it done, can increase equity for people who prefer to work alone and only collaborate when necessary. In the last few slides, I will review with you possible ways to communicate that you do value the output and how to provide a supportive environment that promotes equitable spaces in the classroom and the workplace. Question: how many introverts does it take to screw in a light bulb? Answer: why does it have to be a group activity? Many research students in education over many years show that group work in the classroom can promote a good deal of learning. There are also a lot of other approaches that may promote learning too. For instance, introverted students tend to learn better when deep focus is supported. Keep in mind as well that for introverts, class after class of group work drains their energy more so than for extroverted and ambiverted students. It may be wise to design some flexibility into the classroom space, keeping in mind that the introverted student likely just left a previous class that required group work, and will likely have another class after your class finishes that likewise requires group work, as group work is very popular in our default extroverted classroom cultures. Those of you familiar with cats know that they hate having closed doors and have a tendency to hang out on the threshold or within the small opening of a slightly open door. Many people, in my view, misinterpret this as the cat can't make up its mind whether it wants in or out. In my opinion, the cat simply wants their options to remain open so they may make their own choices whenever they please. Likewise, choice and flexibility within limits are essential when designing a classroom space for diverse populations. In class, think, pair, share, or journaling, or small group discussions can be effective before opening up for a larger discussion. This allows introverted students time to process the information, ponder, and then share. This works well for the ambi and extroverted students too. They get the large class discussion during which they can express their ideas as well. Think, pair, share, followed by a large class discussion, can effectively meet the needs of a diverse student population. A related idea for smaller sized classes is to propose a question to the class and then have students arrange themselves into a circle. One at a time, they address the question at hand, taking turns. This allows students time to formulate their thoughts and gives everyone an opportunity to voice their ideas. Another recommendation is to encourage different approaches to communication. For instance, web-enhancing in-person classes offers many opportunities for diverse needs. Because introverted people formulate their thoughts before speaking, in a face-to-face class, they are sometimes thinking through the question they'd like to ask, while the extroverts and ambiverts jump in more readily. And then just as the introverted student has their question formulated, the discussion or lecture has already moved on. One suggestion is to reassure your students that they may use the online class discussion boards to ask additional questions or to comment on the day's topics after class. Research in the area of online education shows that introverts prefer and like online communication over in-person, often due to their need to think things through and formulate their thoughts. There is no pressure, no hurry, and no competition with other raised hands when interacting asynchronously online. Next, encourage students to email you with additional questions and then answer those emails. Also, invite students to your office hour, whether online or in person, to ask questions and discuss further, as introverts are more likely to disclose more, ask more questions when they're one-on-one with the professor as opposed to in a large class. Consider also multiple ways to measure class participation. An introverted student is more likely to show up to your office hour or to turn to their classmate next to them to sift through concepts. If you are measuring class participation, are you taking those kinds of interactions into account? Most class participation limits credit to impromptu speaking up in class or raising hands, behaviors that come naturally to extroverts. If class participation is measured and graded, consider including means of assessments such as short written check-ins or count online communication on the course site toward class participation. Along the same lines, try to balance group work with individual reflective assignments. Do have time for group work. Also, do have time for quiet, individual focus and deeper thinking. If your space allows, consider balancing social spaces with quiet zones in which students may concentrate on a specific task or assignment. Guidance in the area of supporting introverted learners suggests allowing time for reflection, before and after group work, and before and after large discussions. Finally, learn and remember students' names. Your quieter students may be overlooked in the large classroom space, and it will take a bit more effort to associate them with their assignments. Once you do, be sure to give them specific feedback on their assignments using their names and noting their contributions. Considering equity and inclusion is certainly necessary for the classroom, but also when considering our colleagues and the work environment. Consider that every one of us is overworked. Every one. Whether we serve as classified staff, faculty, or in administration, we all have too much on our plates in this district. Studies on employment trends show that people in the U.S. are working more than in previous generations for less. For introverted people in particular, they are especially drained by the end of the day when they have spent their time in meetings, teaching classes, and in informal interactions without their colleagues throughout the day. I'm sure all of us have seen the should have been an email meme complaining about meetings. I don't know its origin, but I suspect it may have originated with an introvert. Because they are actively managing their external stimulation and energy levels throughout the workday, introverts tend to communicate more effectively by way of email and other written communications over in-person meetings. We do have to have some in-person meetings, but can we cut out the unnecessary ones? To ensure meetings are more equitable, it is suggested to only call meetings when they have an explicit purpose, and that the meeting is the superior way to reach the stated goals. Before scheduling a meeting, ask yourself whether there are ways these goals can be met without calling a meeting. Unfortunately, I've seen colleagues call meetings because they, quote, miss seeing their colleagues, which in my view is inappropriately using their power to get their personal needs met. If you miss people, organize a happy hour or a coffee talk at the student center. And sure, these activities are optional. Also, you may schedule one-on-one time with your colleague if you really miss seeing them. Continuing, it is recommended to avoid using social interactions to gauge engagement. Just because someone is not attending a meeting or a team-building event does not mean they are not engaged or want to participate. Just because an office door is closed does not automatically mean the person is unfriendly or detached from the department. There are many reasons for these behaviors: scheduling conflicts, meetings have been historically inefficient and there are better uses for their time, or they could be an introvert managing their energy levels and interacting at this particular time overburdens them. Consider, what are the alternatives to social interaction in which this person demonstrates engagement with the division or department? Can you schedule one-on-one time on occasion to build connections? Pay attention. Expand your ideas of what engagement looks like. Another way to support not only introverts, but everyone in the area is to send meeting agendas ahead of time so that colleagues may arrive prepared. Again, your introverted colleagues need the time to think through what they wish to say. So having the issues identified before the meeting helps them and everyone to come ready to participate. Allow choice. In-person interactions, hybrid, and allow follow-up after meetings are available. In 2024, we have a lot of free and easy to use tools to make meetings accessible. Consider that we have colleagues with varying schedules who may be working 100% or partly remotely. Research studies on introverts show that they perform better when in remote meetings, and they also perform better when they participate in online discussions. Are you providing these opportunities to your colleagues? Be aware as well that a normal workday can be exhausting for introverted people, and respect their need to manage their time with others. Schedule your time with them when you want or need their input. Also, let's celebrate diversity in the workplace. Introverts, when in leadership positions, tend to allow for others to be proactive and creative without putting their stamp on the project. That should be highly valuable in a workplace like ours, whereby we have highly educated people with a lot of skills and talent who are motivated to improve our college campus and culture. When hiring, are you hiring similar personality types? It is a myth that extroverts make the best teachers. Introverts not only make good teachers, but can have a strong stage presence when in the front of a classroom, even if quiet when off stage. Some well-known performers purported to be introverted are Meryl Streep, Tom Hanks, Zendaya, Ella Fitzgerald, Lady Gaga, Keanu Reeves, Emma Watson, and more. I know for myself, when I refer to what I do in RAFE when I'm teaching, I am partly performing. And so you can be an introvert and you can have a strong stage presence. These are not mutually exclusive ideas. Finally, going to coffee with a classmate or colleague, or finding a study partner or small group to study with may lead to developing friendships or simply good working relationships. However, when the informal activities appear compulsory or there are negative consequences for bowing out, we have an inequitable matter on our hands. A common informal activity in many offices is that of the office birthday party. What happens if you don't attend because you've been overstimulated as a result of your workday? Will you be pressured to not be a party pooper? Will you be misinterpreted and judged negatively? Will the celebrant misinterpret your absence as a dislike of them? I'd like to take a few moments to play a segment of a group made up of, I strongly suspect, are a group of well-known introverts. This segment comes from Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, a popular news quiz show hosted on NPR. Listen to how this supposed fun activity is described by the game participants.
All right, your last quote is someone griping about a time-honored office tradition that's fading away.
We had 4 of them in a 2-week span. That's a lot of cake.
What office tradition apparently just has too much cake for it to last?
Office birthday party?
Exactly, office birthday parties. They are ending, according to the Wall Street Journal. This is happening, apparently, because workers realized that while they were working at home during the pandemic, they just didn't miss them. There were also, of course, when they came back, they demanded higher wages and more flexible schedules, and bosses were like, okay, we heard the part where we take away cake.
I hope that this gains momentum and we can actually cancel out the happy birthday song altogether.
Right, but you don't like the song?
It's so sad. You try and put a spin on it, it's a funeral dirge.
Right.
Everyone's looking around at each other. Happy birthday to you. Oh, someone just give the eulogy and wrap this up.
And then when you finally end it, some poor fool just keeps going with the how old are you? It's hell. It's basically hell. Jokey, how did Rachel do in our quiz?
Now, there may be some introverts who delight in such parties, but consistent with the research in this area, extroverts are more likely to be naturally rewarded by such activities, and introverts not only less so, but they may feel more stress due to the social pressure of expecting to behave in ways that go against their natures. These kinds of informal interactions, to be equitable, should be optional. Are there ways to communicate no pressure and make informal interactions the norm in your area's culture? We are nearing the end of today's presentation. I hope the goals for the talk were met and that you are now better able to describe the psychological concept of introversion, differentiate among introversion, extroversion, and ambiversion, identify ways default U.S. and college cultures may increase stress for introverted students and colleagues, and apply ideas to incorporate into the classroom and office environments to better support diverse classroom and work populations. Thank you for your presence today. While the video played, I wrote down some of your questions and comments, and I will be addressing those with you live in about 5 minutes. I'm providing a 5-minute break, and then I will join you live. If we have time for more questions, I will take those after addressing the questions already asked. If there are more questions than time, please feel free to email me at my Los Rios email address or through my business at lotusthrive.com. Finally, would you open the URL I posted in the chat in a new tab on your browser? That link goes to an anonymous feedback form. I'm always growing in my various roles, and feedback helps me to become even better at my job. Thank you. I'll see you in about 5 minutes.